Swadee Krab. Good afternoon. Today is Saturday, the 10th of August, 2019. What I have to say today is about my presence up in Chiang Mai province as of last week on Sunday, the 4th of August, 2019, at the invitation of the Future Forward of Thailand party. In Thai language is the พรรคอนาคตใหม่ which is one of the two main opposition parties in the current Parliament of Thailand. It created quite a surprise and consternation among the Thai public in general, particularly those that are keenly interested in the political activities and affairs of the country. That's why I, Kasit Piromya, did accept the invitation from the opposition party. I think the reason for accepting the invitation was that in politics there's a need for a dialogue. It doesn't mean that because we have differences in policy direction or even ideology that we should not talk to one another. We should have the conversation to know each other and to try to find a common ground, to find points of compromise so that we possibly could move the country forward. And each side or all sides should not be behaving in such a way that would be the obstacle to the progress and advancement of the country. So I attended the seminar on the new constitution organized by the Future Forward Party of Thailand, พรรคอนาคตใหม่ and I think what I said at the seminars and by other panelists and so on were fully reported by various news agencies and social media. So I don't have to repeat except to say shortly that the present constitution currently in use at the moment is made Thailand a sort of a quasi-democratic country. But if we want to move forward to become a full-fledged democratic country, there is a definite need to amend or even to write a new constitution. And it's better to begin the conversation of all parties concerned from now on. So we will have more time for deliberation and so on. But putting the seminar aside, I did have a chance to have a sort of a luncheon meeting with Kun Thanathorn Jingrungrungkit, the leader of the Future Forward Party. And in the evening, I had a sort of working dinner with Dr. Piyabut, the Secretary General of the party. And it was not a one-to-one meeting. I think both at the luncheon and at the dinner talk, conversation and so on, there were almost 10 people sitting around. So it was not a secretive meeting. It was an open conversation carried out or conducted in a very civilized manner. So what was the content of the luncheon conversation with Kun Thanathorn? I would be happy to tell you that he did ask me one particular question about the reform of the armed forces of Thailand. And I said, yes, there is a need for drastic reform of the armed forces of Thailand, whether the army, the navy or the air force. But I was a bit critical of Kun Thanathorn, the way he proposed the reform in a more confrontational manner and without a sort of a principle or substance. So I took the opportunity to tell him and some of his senior colleagues my views on how to approach on the question of the reform of the armed forces of Thailand. I said that one must begin by looking at the international context. The advancement of technology, cross-border crimes, natural disaster because of the climate change and so on, movement of people, refugees, asylum seekers and so on, migration, and all of this must be taken into consideration. And then there are also at the same time civil wars, social conflict in one particular country, conflict between nations and so on, that led to the displacement of the people. So how is that related to the function of the armed forces or the military in general? And I said that I said to them, to Kun Thanathorn, that one has to repositioning the role functions of the armed forces. And from my point of view, the reform of the Thai armed forces should be directed in the direction of working together with the United Nations, namely in the peacemaking and peacekeeping operation under the blue helmet of the United Nations or the UN Joint Command. So that would be a very great contribution of the Thai armed forces to peace and security of the international community. At the same time, the armed forces are quite vital on the disaster relief. We have earthquakes, we have tsunami, and then we have fires in the forest. So those are natural occurrences, sometimes are man-made, but the scale of it and the severity of it needs the support and the presence of the armed forces personnel, their equipment, the ships, the helicopters, the trucks, the flat bottom boats and so on. So that's another one that where the armed forces could come in. Besides this peacekeeping operation, joint patrol, in Somalia against the pirates in the Strait of Malacca, between Malaysia, Indonesia and Thailand for the safety of navigation and for the movements of fishing boats and yachts, pleasure boats and so on. It would need the supporting role of the armed forces. So having said that, then the question about the reform of the Thai armed forces is whether we could reform them in order that they can serve the international community at large. At the same time, there are so many cross-border problems, trafficking of animals, of human beings, and then cyber crimes, antiques crimes, drugs, and so on. And it would not be sufficient for the civilian officers or the policemen to fight all of these cross-border crimes. So it might need the presence of the armed forces to be supported, the police and the civilian and so on. So my point to Kun Thanathorn is that we need to sit down together, have an in-depth discussion about the challenges internationally across the border and inside Thailand, and adjust the role and the activities and the formation or the structure of the armed forces accordingly. So there is no point to be confrontational, to tell the armed forces that I will reduce personnel and budget by 60%. In that approach is confrontational and inviting opposition unnecessarily. It would be better to sit down together, look at the national context, regional context, and the international context, and from there work back to the new role of the armed forces. At the same time, warfare in the future might not necessarily need human beings anymore. We will have the robot soldiers, we will have the AI soldiers, we will have the drone technologies that could move, and both sides could fight each other with robots, with AI and with drones. So there will not be much more need for human beings as soldiers. So in that sense, every armed forces around the world would have to train officers and soldiers and so on to be technologically well versed and so on. So soldier in the future might be the controller of the computers, of the robots, of the AI, but no longer be in the battlefield. So in that sense, armored forces have to reform itself and tune itself towards the utilization fully of new technology advancement and so on. So I said these few points, on peacekeeping, cross-border crime, disaster release, and the advent of the new technology and so on. These are the 4 important points that necessitate a rethinking of the rationale of having the armored forces. And it will be more of a positive approach instead of confrontational that, you want to go directly at reducing the number of personnel, of the equipment, of the budget, and so on, without having the reason to support your argument why there must be the reform and the streamlining of the armored forces. And what I have said to Kun Thanathorn as of last Sunday, I think it was quite well received. So we did have a sort of a civilized exchange point of view. My point is that Kun Thanathorn, myself, and so on, we sometimes we remain on the opposite side in terms of political directions and policies and so on. But it doesn't prevent us on trying to sit down together. And all along, I have been speaking to the top personnel of the Pheu Thai party or even the red shirt movements and so on. I think it's time now in Thailand that all walks of life, all ideologies, all diverse views and so on must turn to one another, have a dialogue, exchange views, come to the understanding what are the problems of Thailand and what are the measures to get out of these problems. I think we have bogged down in confrontational type of politics for almost 15 years. It's about time that we become more sensible, more mature, and talk to one another. And this message is not only to Kun Thanathorn of the Future Forward or to the Pheu Thai, but in particular also to the government led by General Prayut Chan-o-cha, that he must sit down at the head of the table and invite all parties concerned to a table and discuss about the predicaments, difficulties of Thailand and how to overcome all of these problems and move the country forward. We need to talk to one another. สวัสดีครับ Thank you very much.